five and dime. The entire city of Harlan was actually built on an Indian mound. It wasn't obvious that it was an Indian mound, but the main reason for the construction of it on the mound was because it was a little bit higher, so probably less flooding, and they just felt safe. Well, while a lot of the town was being constructed, it was determined that this was an Indian burial mound, and in fact, if you're local, Mound Street here a few streets over is named for the Indian mounds that Harlan is built upon. This site right here, you can still see the ghost sign, no pun intended, of Scott's Five and Dime. While this building was being constructed, it has been reported that there were skeletons found. Now, these weren't your typical skeletons. It is said that these were giant skeletons.
Yes, we have the articles.
Yeah, we have the articles, and these were much larger than the average human being. I'm thinking that they said they were what, between 8 to 10? 8 feet tall.
Yep.
So massive skeletons were found on this site. Now this will lead us into maybe some more
This is also
tales.
where the first courthouse was.
Yes, this is basically the founding spot of the city of Harlan. Built right on top of a mound where there were giants found. and this is documented. This isn't just a legend. There were actually newspaper reports, and we have them about these. And a lot of people seems to know about all of the skeletons that were found, while not just here, but the entirety of Harlan. That every time they started building a building, once they got so deep, they would start finding the skeletons. But it is unusual here because they were huge, according to reports.
Yes. Now also, some of the things found with the skeletons, the giant skeleton that was found here was very unusual. You had a pipe that was made out of a blue type stone. You had a ceremonial dagger that was made out of a green type stone. I don't know of any blue stones or green stones around here.
No.
Also, the pottery found how it was fired in the interior, the finish. They couldn't duplicate it back in the day, so they don't. I mean, they were more advanced. They also had conch shells. Y'all know where those are from, right? Ocean. So how in the world did they get here? And also other odds and ends of jewelry. Now, some of the other, what's interesting about the skeletons, they were found, well, they've been found throughout the United States, but in Kentucky, there have been giant skeletons found with copper or brass helmets, breastplates, and also some swords, abnormally large swords. But that is what was found here. And how they picked this for the first courthouse is they said it had the tallest trees and was up on a mountain. But like what Darla said, they did that probably because of the flooding, because the Cumberland River, the river's been redirected 2 or 3 times during the Harlan being built. And the headwaters were probably right across the street, right around where the football field is. It's not always been down at Dairy Queen. So, and there's been explorers in here since the 1790s. I think Ravinsky was probably one of the first folks to come in here, and he documented a lot of the mounds. Hey man, there's a lot of mounds, and I think you can find his works that mention that. But anyways, that's the minutia of this, and we shall move along.
Site, the first thing that we're going to talk about is the Ebersole building, which is on this side, on my right, your left. The Ebersole building has a very unique history. It also has a very tragic history. The first thing I'll tell you about is an unsolved murder that took place right down there, probably right around where the canopy is. You think, Tony, is that correct?
Yeah.
This was called the Thrifty Shop back in the 60s. It was a women's clothing store. There was an African-American janitor named James Blair. Every day during the winter, James would make sure that the coal furnace had plenty of coal in it and that the fire was going so that the shop could get heat to it. And he did this every morning, every night. One Friday night in the winter, which was payday, he got his payday. He went down to the furnace in the basement to put coal in it. Someone was waiting for him, and it appears that they beat him to death with something similar to a baseball bat. The motive was strictly they had watched his pattern and they knew that he had some money and they robbed him. He was found by the employees of the shop that morning. It kept getting colder and that was not like him. They started getting concerned, so they went down and found him. James was from Alabama, and after his murder, his family moved back to Alabama, and basically his murder it's unsolved today. There were no suspects, so it is an unsolved murder. The Ebersole building is haunted. It could be haunted by James Blair. If it's not, it could also be haunted by several other things. It is said that at one time, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a skull of a Native American here that was found. Yeah, an old skeleton that actually was in an office here, probably, that they found while building some of these buildings.
Donated to UK. It probably was the giant that they found. They kept it in the
They kept him up here.
Or
she.
And we actually have caught EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, in the top part of the building from an African American gentleman. We're not sure that it's James Blair, but we have caught EVPs when we're talking about the murder. Now, also, there's been the natives that the gentleman saw.
Yes, there have also been apparitions of Native Americans spotted in this building. So this building is probably one of the more active buildings in the city of Harlan, as far as if you want to call it haunted or just being frequented by lots of spirits. But there are lots of reasons why.
Yeah, now that you said haunted, we won't say that Haunted Discoveries may have done an episode.
They may have done an episode here.
And we won't say that it may be premiering in spring of 25.
Spring of 25.
But it's a good possibility. Good possibility.
You never know. It could happen.
Now, what about the apparitions from into the coffee shop?
Yes, that's what happened. What happened? Can you hear me? I'm unhooked. Did I get unhooked?
No.
Okay, so now we're going to look at Moonbow Coffee Shop. This was called, or I guess it still is called, the Buttermore Building. Now, it's got 3 floors. At one point, this was what you would call a hotel or a boarding house. Now, I think also at one time this was an apartment building. Today, because the Moonbow's not that old, I think the Moonbow coffee has been here maybe 5 years, but customers see a man and he's wearing a hat. The workers claim to see this man pretty often. Now, if I'm not mistaken, is this where Dana lived? Dana Green?
I'm not sure.
I think she lived up here. A woman named Dana lived up here when she first got married, and they were frequented by a ghost so often that they named him. I think they named him Charlie. Did they name him Charlie?
Yeah,
I think it's Charlie. They claim that Charlie followed them to a party at Ages and never came back. So he stayed at Ages.
Charlie was the fun ghost.
He wanted to party.
He was the fun ghost.
So this is another very active, I can't say it's more haunted than the Ebersole, but it has its own activity of its own.
Speaking of Eversoles, Green Adams Eversoles law office, we passed it. They think that the apparition, but I don't want to spoil the episode, the alleged apparition that Haunted Discoveries allegedly came in and investigated was Green Adams Ebersole. Now, as Darla said, this was it was a hotel, and they think that the gentleman that's coming through the back, he comes in through the back and comes forward. They think it's Green Adams Ebersole because his law office was right just across the alley, and they think he's coming in to grab lunch from the old hotel. Now, we won't say that somebody got a photo of Green Adams Ebersole and somebody showed them the photo and they said, that's the guy. But it could have happened. But we'll let you watch the show. But yeah, and Virgil Ebersole, and Virgil helps us a lot. Great guy. So if y'all ever see Virgil, he's a good fella. Virgil and I have caught several EVPs. If you look at that window right there, that was his grandfather's office. And I think some of Green Adams Ebersole's stuff is in there as well. So we won't say that Virgil and I have caught EVPs in there, but we probably caught some EVPs.
Up there, yes.
Up there.
I love it. Yeah.
Mommy used to work there.
All right, here we go, on down the street.
Statue of Action. Talk about the guys in the shootout.
We're going to talk about several locations right here. The first one we'll talk about is what's now Portal Pizza. I don't know if we have longtime Harlan natives, but that was for years the Harlan National Bank. Don't know if you remember that. When it became the pizza place, here comes a car. Let's make sure everything, all right, it's okay. When it became the pizza place, the servers and employees of the pizza place started picking up on different activity there. The activity is on toward the back of the building where the elevator used to be. I don't think the elevator works anymore, but there seems to be a lot of activity there. They see a man who actually looks like someone in modern day. He has slacks on, he's got a polo shirt on. So what we think is that it is an employee of the Harlan National Bank that's still there, just simply thinking that he's doing his job every day, and he doesn't realize that it's not a bank at all anymore, it's a restaurant. So a lot of employees have shared different stories. There have been investigations there, and it does seem to have some activity. Now, right down the street here, the now yellow building is Sassy Trash. Sassy Trash used to be a printing shop, and upstairs was a casket company. They built caskets there. Now, the owners of Sassy Trash, they live in the whole building. They live there, and there's a lot of activity there. There is one particular thing that I recall that I think is kind of funny. They have a bell that you ring for service. Well, sometimes all during the night, all the time, that bell rings. So it seems to be very active. There was actually a documentary called Haunted Bazaar, like Bazaar
Encounters. Check us out. Shameless plug. Check us out on Tubi, Amazon Prime, and all the other better streaming services. So check us out.
All right, one more thing about this location. There was a hotel, and it is partially, I think, still standing, where what they call the state office, but it was called the Llewellyn hotel. On that location, while they were building the hotel, of course they found more skeletons. They found bones, skeletons. Now this I think is off the record, but they were told to not report it because they felt like the construction would stop.
One of the skulls that they found was anytime that you're looking at anything old, they'll say misshapen or this, which means giant. Usually means giant or oblong. It would be even cooler if it was oblong because that would mean
one of the people that I spoke to, I don't know. They said the skeletons were deformed. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that means. So they could have been giants, or they could have been very odd, small. I don't know. But they called them deformed skeletons. And when they reported it, they said, just don't say anything about it because we got to build this hotel. We've spent too much money. So that just kind of got buried. I'm sorry, I'm tired, you all. So that is a little bit about this area. Let's go toward the courthouse, the Belt Building. Let's go about halfway up there and we'll stop again. But on this street, there was a shootout.
Bang.
Many, many years ago. And let's go. I'm kidding. There was a shootout, and it was partially because of a love triangle. Isn't that correct?
That's right.
And it also involved basically elected officials hiring this murder to be done. But it happened right here, and several men, at least one, maybe two, fell dead. Right here, 2 men fell dead on this street.
One and one later, they were killed down at Feuding bus station.
So a lot of a lot of violence took place on this street. Also on this street used to be a hospital. Wasn't it right up there?
No, it was over there.
No,
about a block
what about right there? Dr. Somebody's office was right there. Right there. Yes. Okay, so there was a doctor's office up there, and we have gotten stories from the past employees that a ghost basically drove the nurses and the receptionist crazy. You know who it is. I'm not gonna tell you. You know who it is. Okay. I can't tell her. She wanted to remain anonymous, but she worked there for I think 18 years, and she said it was pretty constant of thinking a patient was coming in for an appointment. You go out, there's nobody there, and lots of sounds. And I've always wondered, and I don't know this for sure, but this street was so violent. I mean, could the spirits have just kind of made their way on up the street and up into a building? I don't know. But I just try to relate one thing to another. Would you like to add anything to this?
Yes.
Okay, I figured you would.
Okay, how this started was you had Mr. Hensley, you had Joe Hensley and Avery Hensley that owned the taxi service. The taxi service was a front for liquor trade. They had worked for Harlan PD and resigned the year before. They used to run the protection racket for the bootleggers. So they were cutting in on the profits from the city PD. And the guy that worked for him, Don Harville, that's right, Don, he wanted what Avery had. He wanted his business and he wanted his wife. So he was working with Harlan PD and the hitmen that the ex-mayor and the chief of police hired, Middleton's, to get that. So whenever they came in one day, Mr. Harville had telephoned ahead and said, "Hey, I'm going to pick up the Hensleys. I'll be there at whatever time." So they pull in, let the Hensleys out. He pulls in, he lets the Hensleys out. He drives off. Joe Hensley walks down the street. Avery comes out, and it's either this telephone pole or that pole. There was a Crystal Kitchen in here. There was like a diner and a taxi stand. Okay, so he's either there or there. And he just leaned up against the telephone pole watching traffic and hanging out. Well, the Beach brothers, Claude and
Henry?
I don't remember.
Let's call him Henry.
Henry,
Henry.
for lack of a better, Claude and Wheeler.
Yeah, that's it.
They had killed several people already. They were kind of like the. See, look at that. Paranormal already before we can get to Courthouse. So they pulled up. There was a barber shop right around the corner, and that's where I forget whether it's Claude or Wheeler that done the shooting. So he gets the sign. He comes out. He walks up to Avery. They had been friends in the past, but now they kind of were on different sides. But they weren't like bitter enemies or anything at this time. So he was able to get fairly close to him, and he shoots him 4 times. Just 4 times. 2 or 4 times. He falls down, and he's falling. As he's falling, he pulls his pistol out as well. And Beach had walked over to finish him off. Well, he rolls over, and he has that pistol, and he tries to shoot Beach. But back in the day, the powder was different for the ammunition, and it was more corrosive. So he hadn't cleaned his pistol apparently in a long while, and the cylinder wouldn't rotate. Locked up, cylinder's locked up. So he's sitting there doing this number, and Beach thinking it's going to go off at any time, so he takes off or backs up. Well, Joe had heard the shots. He comes running up the street, sees what's going on with his stepdad, scoops up the pistol and starts chasing Beach. And the pistol won't fire. Car pulls up with the other brother. They get in, and what's odd about it is they had their 14-year-old nephew with them helping to commit a murder. He's in the car as well. So they take off, get away. They take Avery over to Old Harlan Hospital, which is a couple of blocks over, which is where the clinic is now. He dies, Avery dies 3 or 4 hours later, and Joe doesn't leave until around 1 o'clock, hoping every these folks are gone. So guess who he calls? Don Harville. So Don calls ahead and says, "Hey, I'm going to get Joe. What do you want me to do?" Well, they had him stop down. He picks up Joe, and they stop down at the VTC bus station. So the guys are waiting. So when he stops, one of the folks step up, jerk the door open, and shoots him in the skull, shoots him in the head. Obviously, he's dead instantly. Then they pistol whip Harville to make it look good, and they think they got away with it, so they leave. Beach gets arrested. A couple of those guys get arrested because of a couple of construction workers from out of town saw them. They didn't think that they'd been seen. So, long story short, nobody's going to help them get out of this time. So they start talking. Well, you have the mayor, or what used to be the mayor, I forget his first name, but he was Middleton, and his brother was still chief of police. And they owned the VTC bus line. So they ended up having to sell the VTC bus line, and they paid the 2 widows off. I think they got $500,000 out of it. I think it may have been the city of Harlan bought it. I mean, I have all the articles. And it cost them $200,000 a piece. They give those two widows $200,000, and I guess the other $100,000 was so they get a new start. They were never prosecuted, never pulled a day in jail. $200,000 back then would have been, God, Darla, what do you think? So, yeah. And this was in 1951. Okay, so whatever $200,000 would have been worth in 1951. In 1961, Don Harville and Beatrice had been, they never got married, but they were an idol. And they'd been arrested a couple of times. They were still in the liquor business and all that. Well, they had a lady that worked for them that their husband, he was a Blanton, he just got out of prison for trying to murder her, tried to cut her throat. He tries to slash her. If they have an argument, he tries to slash her throat. She leans back, he nicks her, and he goes to prison for attempted murder, and now he's out. Both Harwell and Blanton are World War II veterans. And he comes in, he's harassing Beatrice. No, Beatrice is the wife. I forget the name of the waitress. But he's harassing her. Harwell, basically asks him to leave. He leaves. He's drinking. The next night he comes back, and he looks at his ex-wife, and he says, Don Harwell doesn't mean anything to me. I'll burn him down. That's old-timer slang for I will kill him right here. So he goes out. He has him leave, and then he gets under Harwell's skin. He's trying to get he's pulling Harwell out for an ambush. So Harwell leaves, Blanton leaves, Harwell, overcome with emotion, he leaves right behind him. So Blanton shoots Harwell 6 or 8 times with a 25 automatic and shoots him in the chest. Now, he's falling back. The newspaper articles say he shot him from across the street. He didn't. If anybody's ever shot much at all, you know that a 25, you're not going to group a 25 auto really fast, that, just really tight in the chest. But now, Harwell falls back against the taxi. That's the reason I know how he was close. Now, he falls back. Now, he pulls a gun. Well, his gun works. And as he's falling, he goes, pow, hits him elbow or shoulder, spins him, and he shoots again, severs his carotid, dies instantly. A few minutes later, Harwell dies. And the irony of that is Don Harwell dies within 30 feet of where Hensley was murdered, that he helped to, facilitate 10 years before. That was the irony of that thing. So only in Harlan County. You can't make this stuff up.
All right, moving right along. Here we go. Some stuff pretty quickly here. I own Mount Pleasant, and actually my husband and I have owned Mount Pleasant since 1989. I don't know if you know where the funeral home is, but the house in front of it, many people say, is one of the most haunted houses in Harlan. I lived there. I was 19. I didn't have enough sense, I don't think, really to know it was haunted. But that house is where Officer Pope was the first Harlan City policeman killed in the line of duty. And this happened in the 1920s. It happened in the yard. It was the Ball home at the time. And apparently there was a visitation, not related to the funeral home. There was a visitation at the house. They got too drunk. The police were called. There was a shootout, and Officer Pope was killed right there in the yard. I had no idea. In fact, I didn't know this until like probably about 20 years after I moved out of the house. I knew I didn't like the house. I didn't really know why I didn't like the house. But do you all remember when there was Western Sizzlin' here in Harlan? Ken Moody was the owner. Ken lived right up the street here, right up on Mound toward Ivy Street. Every Sunday, Ken would head to the steakhouse. He'd go right by the funeral home, right by my house, and head on out. One evening, he calls Mount Pleasant because the phone was open 24 hours a day. So we answered it, and he said, "Hey, who's fighting in your yard?" And I said, "Nobody." He said, "I just saw a policeman fighting 2 men in your yard." And I said, "Well, we've been home. We've been home all evening. We didn't hear or see anything." And we really didn't pay any attention to it. And then 20 years later, when I started researching my second book, I realized that that is the spot where Officer Pope was killed, and I really do think Ken may have seen that. So that's very interesting, and I lived in a haunted house, didn't know it. One last thing before we go in. Across the street here was Harlan Hardware. I don't know if y'all remember Harlan Hardware. They had jewelry, they had a little bit of everything. Well, earlier part of the century, it was Harlan Hardware and Casket Company. And they built caskets upstairs. Hardware stores typically built the caskets back in the day.
Well, sometimes business was dead.
Dead. I don't think
So they had to
this
have something to
is.
fall back on.
I don't think this is particularly a ghost story, but it is part of Harlan's tragic history. There was a Yancey mining accident in the 1930s.
1932.
1932. During this mine tragedy, this explosion, 6 brothers were killed at the same time. They were the Massengale brothers.
Yeah.
The Massengale brothers, all 6 of them were put up in Harlan Hardware and Casket Company in those caskets because, I mean, it's very rare that you have 6 at one time and 6 in the same immediate family. So until they decided what they were going to do with those young men, they were laid out up here in the casket company. I don't know if it's haunted, but it's just a very tragic part of Harlan County history. So are we ready to go in?
Yes.
Okay. Right where I'm at, there was a man by the name of Bill Lewis. He was actually shot dead here, and it was over an election. And I think he had a ballot box or something. But anyway, he was killed right here. Now, there have been people who have fallen to their death from up here.
Wrong.
Huh?
Wrong.
Or thrown. Some have jumped off, committed suicide. Something did not go their way in the courtroom. There has been at least one woman who was tossed off by her then ex-husband over a divorce trial, and she fell to her death here. So even in the Harlan County, the Harlan County Courthouse, there has been murders and there has been a lot of death. And in fact, where we're going next, there has been even more death and murders.
It's where Manzo Shepherd met his demise.
Yes. So we ready to go upstairs?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's head on upstairs.
Okay, anybody that needs to use the elevator is right over here.
Follow Bonnie if you prefer the elevator. Right where I'm at, there was a man by the name of Bill Lewis. He was actually shot dead here, and it was over an election. And I think he had a ballot box or something. But anyway, he was killed right here. Now, there have been people who have fallen to their death from up here.
Wrong.
Huh?
Wrong.
Or thrown. Some have jumped off, committed suicide. Something did not go their way in the courtroom. There has been at least one woman who was tossed off by her then ex-husband over a divorce trial, and she fell to her death here. So even in the Harlan County, the Harlan County Courthouse, there has been murders and there has been a lot of death. And in fact, where we're going next, there has been even more death and murders.
It's where Manzo Shepherd met his demise.
Yes. So we ready to go upstairs?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's head on upstairs.
Okay, anybody that needs to use the elevator is right over here.
Follow Bonnie if you prefer the elevator. Recently, and I'm thinking this was probably 2 years ago, because we were getting ready to do our first tour with the Harlan Vintage Main, and that's only 2 years old. So it was during that time that an employee named Carrie works right in here. She has a security camera in there at her desk, and she kept seeing a woman in white walking,
1930s, 1940s.
like from a different era, and she saw this, thought it was just somebody at first, comes out, and there's no one here, and it's after hours, so the doors are all locked. She was just doing some stuff, after 5 o'clock. Oops, sorry.
Carrie Beth was working late. She looks up, she sees this lady She's not like solid, her dress is white, it looks like a breeze is kind of blowing. She said she thought that was odd, but she thought she was under a vent or something. And she goes back to work, looks back up a couple minutes later, and the lady's staring at her, looking at that camera right there. Right there where Jenny's at is where she was standing. So Carrie Beth's office is back in the back. It's only like 15 steps. So from the time it would take you to walk from there to here, she's gone. Carrie Beth thought that she was meeting us to do a reenactment of some sort. That's why it didn't, it didn't really register with her. But whenever none of us showed up, and the lady disappeared, she says, "I have to tell you about this." So, we've seen everything up here from full-bodied apparitions to shadow people right down that hallway. There was a, let me tell the damn story.
Not the dance story, yeah.
Okay. Not damn the judge, no way. We were, there was a lot of activity, a lot of noise coming from upstairs where we'll be going. And Dan asked me, he says, "Hey, who's up there?" I said, "Don't know." I said, whoever, Dana or somebody was off at that day. I said, "Nobody's working, And he says, "Well, let's go up." He says, "I'm hearing this because his office is close to the old jail if you just went straight up. His office, like the dumbwaiter, it's covered up now, but that's where the jailer used to live here." Okay? So Dan could hear this really plain. And so we go up, go through everything, nothing. We come back down. Dan's standing at that corner. I'm standing back a little bit, and we're talking. And Dan, he's always been really helpful with the tours and allowing us access to things. But a skeptic, and everybody should be skeptical. Healthy skepticism is good. So I'm looking at the judge, and then out the corner of my eye, I see this shadow figure walk out of an office and walk into the storage. Now, all of that wasn't, before it was renovated, none of that was there. So they were probably just walking from the back of the courtroom forward. So he sees this, and he goes, "Did you?" I said, "Oh, the shadow person?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "That's kind of common, certain times of the year." And he goes, "It can't be it, I saw it, but," and so we moved back out here. He moves from there to here, right under that camera. And we were talking about the shadow person, and all of a sudden that tile goes like that. I thought he was Usain Bolt for about 10, 15. He goes, "I gotta go," and takes off. So now he's a skeptic with but he knows he saw something. So, but we could stand here and talk all night about different things that's happened here. But let's go on into the courtroom, and we will talk about Manzo Shepherd just for a moment. And then, does anybody want to see the beds here? A lot of them were murders, made to look like suicides. There have been suicides. There's been, you name it. There's been a young lady in the 40s burned to death in this room, or it was close by. We think that was a murder because that, back then they were allowed to smoke, and they said she went to sleep, and dropped the cigarette. It caught on fire. I find it really suspect. Nobody smelled the smoke. Nobody was able to get into her, and the mattress burned her to death. I think she was already dead, but she was a niece to one of the politicians. I don't, but it sounds a little bit suspect to me. I don't have any, there was no one ever prosecuted or brought to task for it.
I want to go through all these books.
I'm going to too.
It was built in
Wow.
when building obviously built 1928. Manzo Shepherd's been in this jail. A lot of folks with the mine wars, if they were arrested for murder, they were brought here, or any type of mine violence, and then the trials were held in La Folla, because that was at that time the nearest federal thing, and they had made mine violence a federal crime, so the coal operators wouldn't have as much input into the process. So y'all come on in. We have down, this is where a lot of activity, we call activity all in here. A lot of EVPs down here. They call this the dark side. And we have caught tons of stuff down through there, about halfway.
My
Now,
camera won't.
here, you want me to, how about that?
No, it was just my camera. It was
Now,
stuck. It didn't want to use it.
you will have trouble sometimes with your electronics here.
Yep.
You will be, I won't say right now, but people have been touched, so
I was trying to
don't.
say, has anyone been touched?
don't-
Because they touch me sometimes.
Well,
For
what they'll
real, I've
do,
been
what they'll
touched
do with the
3 times.
females, how's that?
Good.
There we go.
It was
And
my
what they'll
children
do with the
recently.
females, they will touch their hair, they'll tug the male's jacket. Nobody's ever been hurt, nobody's been scratched, there's
They're not
nobody.
able to
But
hurt
now
them.
they are not the nicest folks on this side. This is where they kept the hardened criminals, the murderers, the rapists, and the repeat offenders and things like that. If you feel nauseous, there's no, tell me and we'll
I wanna
get you
go
out.
in.
Oh, yeah, but yeah, that's, hold on, we,
I'm fascinated.
oh yeah. Does anybody have, I know you probably have flashlights on your phones, you're welcome to do that, you're welcome to take photographs and things like that. Then once we do that, we'll come back out, we'll fire up the thermal, and then we'll look down through there. Sometimes you'll see them cross, or you'll hear footsteps or things like that. But, you know, with this not being a regular investigation, we're just gonna hit the high points. Okay, but now let's proceed. You go. You like it?
I do.
Very good. This is, the shower. Obviously one person at a time, but, we caught, Duncan Caldwell and I used to, Duncan and I were starting investigating this place, 12 years ago, or better. And, Duncan's a big guy, worked with him, he was a head ACO for years, and did a great job, and him and Jenny had a fantastic rescue program. But Duncan and I were in here, and I was running the camera, and I was letting Duncan ask the questions. And he's got a big booming deep voice, and so I'm right in here filming him, and he's hilarious. He says, anybody here? I know that bad things happen in prison. You don't have to be ashamed. Because we're in the shower, you know, and I'm like, geez, Duncan. And so, he's going on that line of questioning. He goes, any old men here? Young men here? Any young men here? And I'm like, oh man, we'll never put this out anywhere. And then he goes, any old men here? And I said, Dunk, it sounds like we're making a porn flick. I said, I said, you know, we can't do, you know, we're not gonna do this. But I went back where I reviewed it, but I was aggravating him. And, whenever he asked the question, is there any old men here? I'm standing there with a camera right about there. And it's we're not running a ghost box. I mean, it's just we're running a regular recording. It had to be standing right beside me because the way that the mic picked it up. And when he says, are there any old men here? This voice says, turn around. And so I did not make fun of Duncan anymore. But yeah, that was one of the many EVPs we've caught here. But a lot of them aren't very repetitive of what they did. You know, a lot of them died here.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether they're just trapped or they just don't want to move on because they're afraid of what's going to happen to them. You know, or some of them may not even know they're dead. You know, we don't know those answers. But yeah, this is what they call the dark side. And we interviewed a couple of guards that used to work here back in the day. Unfortunately, they passed on. But you can see those interviews on Imprisoned Spirits. I think it's on Tubi and all that too. But and then Haunted Discoveries has an episode that just aired. They're on Haunt TV on the jail, and they caught some pretty interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. So there we go. Now we want to go upstairs and look at the bullpen. We caught some pretty good evidence there. Also part of the Manzo Shepherd story, which is on Tubi and Prime and all that, was shot here. Big part of it was shot here and in the courtroom. I don't know, 8 years ago we shot it, 7, 8 years ago, 9. So that's, any questions? No? Okay, well let's go back out this way and then we'll go up to the bullpen. Like I said, you're welcome to take photos of graffiti, or you know, any of the cells and things like that.
Modern times. Look what a radiator. God bless him.
This is where they kept the less violent criminals. All that was cells and stuff. When they were redoing the jail, some of them took liberties and look, they cut the bars and stuff, but that's really good steel. That's what your rank and file person thought of the history. This thing was pristine.
Really?
Yeah.
This is a right here.
That's fresh.
Yeah.
Somebody is, well, I mean, so they're intelligent, you know, they're not, you know, it's not like circus animals, you know. I don't want to treat a haunted location like it's a zoo and they're circus. All they are is disembodied energy. You know, they still, I mean, if they can communicate with you, then you know they still have intelligence and they're still, you know. So Joe, whenever I got that EVP, Joe says, "Who's that?" And you know, you tell it was an African American gentleman, and I asked him to do that, and he walks down and across, and then we catch an EVP from him downstairs, and I think it's on maybe one of the YouTube things or something, but Jenny and I were investigating, and I said, you know, who's here with us? Anybody here? Anybody want to talk? And he goes, it's Joe. I go, very cool. I put a name with the gentleman. Yeah. And every now and then you know, he doesn't talk a lot, but he's definitely here.
This was his beat.
And he every now and then he'll make an appearance, but we also down in the courtroom have caught Miss Dana was helping us, and we were running an experiment with a doll and a ball, because there's a girl that's in the courthouse. And every now and then you'll catch something from her, and she'll giggle, or she'll do this, or she'll do that. And so we were running this experiment. I thought that she would respond better to a female. And so we set this thing up. There's a doll and a ball, and Dana says, hey, she says, if you can, and we have this out there somewhere, and I have the clips and things. Knock that ball, push that ball into the floor. Yeah. And this EVP comes across, it says, catch it. And right after she says, catch it, the ball rolls about a quarter way forward and then rolls back. Have it on film.
Playing catch with
Yeah,
ghosties.
yeah, and she responded to Miss Dana. But she's a great person, though. Okay, now, does anybody want to look through the thermal to see what a real piece of equipment looks like? And we film with this. We caught some good stuff with it. Be careful, that's $5,000.
Oh, man.
Don't you be dropping that.
No pressure.
Oh my gosh, you can see good with that can.
You better believe it. And you have, it only sees in white hot or black hot. You can switch which one you want to, because some people can see the white better, some people can see the black better.